started, I will be using 2½ cups of all-purpose flour. Now the original recipe calls for the use of cake flour. I'm also using 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And I will also be adding 1 teaspoon of salt. So today I am using Betty Adams' original red velvet cake recipe. I did make some changes to it, but pretty much it's this recipe. And I will be honest, I am not a huge fan of red velvet cake, but my husband wanted some, so I don't mind making it. And I'm not eating cake these days. But I do notice in the original recipe it calls for 2 half-ounce bottles of Adams red food coloring, and that's the issue I have with red velvet cake. I can taste the food coloring, so I kind of scaled back. But back to the recipe. So here I am adding 3 level tablespoons of cocoa powder. And in the recipe, you're supposed to make a paste with the cocoa powder and the red food coloring. But again, I'm not using a full ounce of red food coloring. So that's why I opted to mix it into my dry ingredients. By the way, I will leave the link to that original red velvet cake recipe if you want to give it a try. Okay, so now that that is combined, I am going to start on the wet ingredients. So here I am using 1½ cups of granulated sugar. To that, I will be adding 4 ounces of shortening. Actually, butter is probably the better way to go, but I do want to try this original recipe, and so does my husband. And it does call for shortening and the Adams extract imitation butter flavoring. So I'll let you know at the end what I think. By the way, I'm not supposed to be eating cake. So the 1 bite of cake that I'm having today, it's pretty much all the sugar and carbs I can have today. But I really do want to see how this original recipe tastes. Okay, so I've added my shortening and I've creamed it with the sugar. Now I'm going to add the imitation butter flavoring and the vanilla extract. And it probably would be better to add this after adding the eggs, just to make sure it distributes evenly through the sugar and shortening. Okay, so I mixed it the best that I could, and now I am going to add 2 large eggs. Okay, so while I'm adding my 2 large eggs and creaming everything together, I want to give a side note here. So I have had plenty of red velvet cake in my lifetime, and this is just my personal preference, but it's not my favorite cake because of the simple fact that I can taste the red food coloring at the end. It leaves this aftertaste. It tastes very medicinal. So today when my husband asked to try red velvet cake, I had no idea he had never tried it. So this is why I opted to go with the original recipe and give it a try. But I am going to scale back using the red food coloring because it does ask, in the recipe it recommends to use 1 ounce of food coloring, and I just think that's too much. So I'm going to scale back on that. But leave in the comment section below your favorite red velvet cake recipe, and I might redo this video and give it a try. Okay, so back to the recipe. I am adding the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients at this point. I'm going to be doing this in batches. It is recommended in the recipe to add part of the dry ingredients and then to add buttermilk in batches as well. So I will be ultimately adding 8 ounces of buttermilk, but I'm adding half now, mixing it, and then I will add the rest of the dry and then the buttermilk. Okay, before I add the rest of the ingredients, I am going to add 10 drops of red food coloring. By the way, I did not explain to my husband why red velvet cake is not my favorite cake. I didn't tell him anything about me tasting any aftertaste with the red food coloring. I'm going to let him try it for the first time and let him form his own opinions, because I don't know if maybe I tried one red velvet cake that just gave me an aftertaste, so now mentally I think it's always going to taste that way, so I don't want to put that in his head. So anyways, I am going to continue adding the rest of the ingredients and combining everything well. Okay, now I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of vinegar. The instructions say to add the vinegar when you add the last part of the buttermilk to your cake batter. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to make sure everything combines well. Okay, so everything is mixed, and I will say this, I did end up adding 5 extra drops, so that makes it 15 in all that I used in this batter. And the color is fine. If you like a deeper red, obviously you would want to use more red food coloring. Okay, so now I'm going to separate the batter into 2 cake pans. I'm using 8-inch cake pans, and I'm only using 2. The recipe recommends you use 9-inch cake pans and separate it into 3. But again, I do what's convenient for me, and I have 2 8-inch cake pans. So I'm just going to level this off, and hopefully I've evened them out. I am going to bake this in a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 to 27 minutes, or until a toothpick comes out clean. Okay, so I think these cakes look fantastic, but once you remove your cakes from the oven, you want to allow the cakes to cool completely before frosting. So while they are cooling off, I am going to make a cream cheese frosting, and here's how I do it. Okay, so here I've taken 1 8-ounce block of cream cheese that has been softened. To soften the cream cheese, I just left it on my kitchen counter for a whole day until it came to room temperature and got really soft. And basically you want to beat and mix the cream cheese to make it workable. Now I'm adding 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Again, I'm going to beat and mix this until everything is combined. Now I'm going to add 6 ounces of softened butter, and I am using salted butter. If all you have is unsalted butter, you can use that. Just add a pinch of salt. I think the addition of salt enhances the flavor of the frosting and it gives it balance. But again, the salt is optional. That's just my opinion. Now that my butter and cream cheese are all combined and creamed together, I'm going to add 2 cups of powdered sugar. Now, to make sure I don't make a mess here, I'm going to mix it first and then I'm going to start to beat it. I will be combining and beating this until the frosting is smooth and creamy. That's why I suggested 25 to 27 minutes, so you can avoid the same mistake I made by over baking it. And you probably want to go with a 9-inch cake pan. I tried to compensate for using the 8-inch, and I think I dried out that do get to have one bite of this today, and the rest is going to go to my husband. But I want to show you what the color looks like, and I gotta say, I see red in there. I think it's a nice color, and I didn't use all of that red food coloring. But now the taste test. It's good, and it's not as dry as I thought it'd be. By the way, my husband really liked this cake, and he can't wait until I make the next one. So I hope you guys give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.